Colt Stephens made headlines around the monster truck world earlier this year, becoming a world freestyle champion and taking him and ThunderROARus to their first ever world championship. This monumental achievement has given his career a significant boost after what was surely a rocky start filled with unfavorable positions and considerable backlash. But many may not know of Stephens' background and his story into becoming the driver for the apex predator ThunderROARus. So without further ado, this is the Colt Stephens story. Born November 30th, Colt Stephens is a second-generation driver like many talent we have in our sport today. His father was the well-renowned Scott Stephens, the original King Crunch owner. With a father like Scott, from day one, Colt would dream of driving a monster truck, and maybe even his father's. And while that hasn't quite come to fruition yet, and I sure hope it does, he would make his dreams of driving one of these 12,000-pound beasts a reality. He would make his debut, funnily enough, on the 2014 Australian Tour, more specifically in the first ever event in Brisbane, with that being my first ever show that I ever went to. Now, unfortunately, I never met Colt, but I do remember him being a fantastic driver throughout the duration of the tour. Stephens would put Monster Mutt Rottweiler through its paces, always doing well but never winning any competitions. He would also drive Rottweiler in the first and currently only event in Auckland, New Zealand. But this was just the beginning of his career. The following year, in 2015, he seemed absent from driving. Or at least, that was the view from the surface. In secret, Stephens was actually the regular Doomsday driver, campaigning the truck at most of its events that year. For obvious reasons. He was never at the forefront like any of the other drivers, because the whole point of Doomsday was to mask the identity of its driver. This would soon become an important deficit to Stephens' growing career, but we will get to that shortly. He would be invited to compete at the Monster Jam World Finals in 2015 as part of the Young Gun Shootout. Now, many were very confused considering Colt had, on the surface, been driving internationally for just over a month, and not even driven since that time. Of course, secretly he was the Doomsday driver, and some did start to put the pieces together. This was probably helped by Colt campaigning New Earth Authority for the Young Gun Shootout, a truck that's, by design, near identical to Doomsday. Oops. Anyway, he would make it all the way to the finals before being defeated by Cody Saucier in the final round. For 2016, he continued to drive Doomsday and was not invited to compete in the World Finals in any capacity. Now is an important time to mention why I think his gig driving Doomsday was never going to last. As a driver, you build up your reputation amongst fans by 1. Interacting in the pit party, and 2. Your ability to perform out on track. You could see his ability out on the track, but unless you were a Monster Jam employee at that time, you didn't know who was driving Doomsday, and as a result, couldn't link the great performances the truck had to its driver. Like the driver's identity, when driving Doomsday, Stephens' talent was masked behind the mysterious atmosphere of the truck, and I think keeping him hidden wasn't a viable career option for him moving forward. Luckily, a new opportunity would present itself later in that year. By now, I'm sure many of you know the story from St. Louis in December of 2016. Stephens drives the truck one more time and reveals to the world his identity, and more importantly, his future career prospects. He would take over the FS1 Cletus truck for 2017, competing in the FS1 West Championship Series. Here, he he would have a successful season, finishing in a tie for 5th place with Jimmy Cretin, and would take his first televised win in San Diego Show 1, where he would win racing. With this impressive season performance, he was invited to compete in the 18th Monster Jam World Finals in Las Vegas. He would make it to round 2 in racing and finish 10th out of 32 competitors in freestyle. A pretty solid performance for a first-time drive at the World Finals. He would continue to drive Cletus in various stadium events post-World Finals, and would also drive Max D in Sao Paulo, Brazil, a very fitting pairing considering events later on in his career. For 2018, another new opportunity was given to Stephens. He was originally announced to drive the all-new BroDozer monster truck for the new year. However, with Monster Jam's unfamiliarity with creating a diesel-powered monster truck and the sheer scope of that project, it was delayed until Nashville of that year. Instead, he would campaign Zombie until the debut of the new truck. He would compete on Stadium Championship Series 2, and despite only winning one competition on that tour, he would finish 2nd in points, just 21 points behind the series champion, Charlie Porkin. However, despite his impressive performance, he was not invited to compete at the World Finals. A baffling move in all honesty, but let's be real, when hasn't Monster Jam made strange picks for the World Finals despite there being other, arguably more deserving drivers who should have made it in? Regardless, Stephens continued to drive Zombie until Nashville, where BroDozer finally made its debut. Despite originally being the only person to drive the truck, Colt would not drive BroDozer until Glendale in October of 2018, though it was somewhat understandable considering it was the Diesel Brothers truck. However, 2019 was, in my opinion, another deficit in Stephens' career. In 2019, he would make his intended debut driving BroDozer. However, he would share driving duties with the Diesel Brothers, only getting to drive in Orlando, Oakland, Seattle, Syracuse, and Philadelphia. Though he did get to drive the truck more than the Diesel Brothers, it would be primarily the other two getting the spotlight. The Diesel Brothers constantly had amazing moments, like the consecutive backflip from Diesel Dave, or how about this incredible save from Heavy D from the World Finals. Speaking of the World Finals, despite Stephens doing the heavy lifting for the team during the season, and the other two never competing in the World Finals, it was Heavy D that got the invite to compete at the World Finals. The same was with the All-Star Challenge, where Diesel Dave and Colt Stephens just watched on as Heavy D drove the truck. And this is where I take issue and maybe present a controversial opinion. I don't think the Diesel Brothers should have driven as much as they did. Whenever a celebrity has driven a truck, it's either been a one-off or an occasional deal, or they've committed to a full-time gig behind the wheel. The Diesel Brothers were prepared to drive for multiple events, but not even show up to some pit parties, or better yet, not even be there for the entire duration of the pit party for the event that they're supposed to be present at. What's more insulting to me is that not only was Stephens always there, even for events where he himself wasn't even competing, but they couldn't even let the heavyweight of the team represent the truck at the biggest events, despite being the most experienced from the team. Unfortunately for me, this situation was the same heading into 2020. Only this time, he would share the driving duties with just Heavy D, as Diesel Dave would debut Bro Camino and share driving duties with that truck with Cam McQueen. As expected, the performances from Stephens and McQueen carried the team to their eventual placements on Stadium Championship Series Green, finishing 5th and 6th respectively. However, all Monster Jam tours were cut short due to the pandemic, which put a halt to everything around the world. With many drivers now out of a drive due to the uncertainty of the state of the world, the future of Colt Stephens' career was unknown. In 2021, Colt Stephens was thankfully no longer a part of the BroDozer team, as the Diesel brothers had essentially parted ways with Monster Jam after 2020. Interestingly, Stephens was not in a driving role, instead announced to be part of the broadcast booth for the 2021 Monster Jam season on NBCSN. Stephens would join Scott Jordan to call the action live from the booth, which would later be edited for television. With Scott still serving as the main commentator, Colt took the role as color commentator, as has every driver who has stepped into the booth. An exciting new career prospect for Stephens was soon a fairly scrutinized one amongst fans. The biggest critique fans had was his excessive shouting and over-the-top reactions.
Get it? Yes, sir! Zombie is gonna go right over Clayton!
And I can understand this critique from both sides. Obviously, from the fans' perspective, especially those from an older demographic, it can be perceived as annoying. But it's important to consider that this commentary was done live as the action was unfolding, in contrast to the usual commentary which is done after the events have taken place. But the main thing I wanted to say was these were raw and genuine reactions, which goes to show how passionate he was for what he was watching.
A lot of space in front of him. Look at that! Set number 2 wheel off of nothing! Nothing. Off of nothing!
Rather than being quite mellow. And let's be real, we have all had reactions like this for crazy stuff, and I'm certainly not absent from this either. Yeah, sorry for your ears, guys. I get a little too hyped when Monster Jam is happening. Another thing I'd like to point out that many overlook is his genuinely great insight during episodes. Regardless, this was his role for the duration of the year, and later reprised his role in the booth for the 2022 Monster Jam season on CNBC. His final episodes in the booth was fittingly at Monster Jam World Finals, where Stephens and Jordan's reactions to the championship race became a memorable moment of this season.
Oh my gosh! Oh, Ryan Anderson spinning out! Oh my gosh! They're both spinning out! Oh my gosh! Look at Vincent! Brandon Vincent is your Spin Master Racing World Champion! Oh, yes! How about that for World Finals? Unbelievable! Yes, sir!
However, after the TV season was done, many questioned what was the next step for Stephens' career. He was still in great shape to return back behind the wheel, and Stephens was itching to get back in a truck. Stephens' return to driving a Monster Jam truck became a reality. He would drive Max D for the second time in his career, fittingly in the country he made a start in, Australia. To say I was hyped for this was an understatement, and this was a huge deal for him as well. He would perform fairly well in Melbourne, though it was clear he needed to dust off the cobwebs just a little. Stephens still showed he had what it took, winning racing in Sydney, which was a great moment for him. He would continue to drive Max D on the international tour for select events, those being Tampere, Finland, and Arnhem, Netherlands, where he continued to perform well. Leading into 2023, his career looked brighter than ever, especially when something big was brewing. In late 2022, Monster Jam began teasing something new for the 2023 season. A countdown was started and would end on January 5th. Just 2 days from the beginning of the new Monster Jam season. And once that countdown ended on that day, a new apex predator was born. ThunderROARus, Monster Jam's newest concept, was unveiled to the world, with Stephens behind the wheel. In an epic reveal video, it showed Colt Stephens driving around on the unfinished track inside Snapdragon Stadium. He would drive ThunderROARus on Stadium Championship Series Blue, with Tony Oaks driving a second ThunderROARus on Arena Championship Series Central. Stephens would only take 2 victories on tour, with a skills win at San Antonio Show 1 and a freestyle win at Houston Show 2. He would finish 8th in this series standings and would be invited to compete at the Master Jam World Finals. He would compete in the main field, as well as the high jump competition. This World Finals would prove to be a storybook moment for his career. Stephens finished in 5th for high jump and was defeated in round 1 of racing. However, freestyle was his career-defining moment.
Ram, I'd like to see a bigger air. Cowabunga, baby! You talk about a ThunderROARus drop. He just dropped that thing from sky high. He was going for a World Finals backflip. And he's got it! There it is again! Oh, he's going right back! Come on, baby! Go, Colt! He's got 2 in a row, back-to-back flips!
While there wasn't anything truly chaotic, like most fans expect from a winning World Finals freestyle run, the fans were really into Stephens' all-out air assault and calculated run. Stephens would take the lead away from Vernard and would only have to go through 4 more other big guns. Every driver laid it down, but only Ryan Anderson seemed to have a run that could top Colt Stephens. With the final championship contending run laid down, the scores would be revealed.
He's done it! He has done it! Colt Stephens is a World Finals freestyle champion!
While many believe Cole or Ryan Anderson's freestyles to be the true winning run of that event, what's done is done and cannot be turned over. Colt Stephens was crowned a World Finals freestyle champion in just his 2nd appearance in a World Finals. His championship win is important for a variety of reasons. It solidifies ThunderROARus as the apex predator of the sport, being one of only 5 other trucks to win a world championship in its debut year. More importantly, he had not only achieved a feat that his father couldn't, but solidified his place in the sport after many trials and tribulations. He is also touted by Scott Jordan to be the only driver in motorsports history to go from the commentary booth to becoming a world champion in their given motorsport. Stephens' career is one of the most interesting out of Master Jam's current crop of drivers. From a fairly obscure debut in my home country, to being the masked man behind the most mysterious truck in the sport. From breaking out and showing his true talent to the world, to sharing the spotlight and sitting on the sidelines. And now transitioning from a commentator role to becoming a world champion. Colt Stephens climbed to the top of the mountain and put his name in the history books. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with some more Monster Truck content.